37 past the hour. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now, Vanderbilt's Rogers Chair and the American Presidency historian Jon Meacham, and acclaimed writer and journalist Tom Ricks. He's the author of the new book, which is out tomorrow, entitled First Principles: What America's Founders Learned from the Greeks and Romans and How That Shaped Our Country.
Thank you all for being with us. Tom, thanks so much. I'm a huge fan of your book. It was great late summer reading when you all were kind enough to forward it to me. And I was thinking about you this weekend as I heard people on the left and the right shout to the heavens, my God, gridlock again. And I just thought of that Silicon Valley phrase that you lifted and talked about in your book, that this sort of creeping compromise, this incrementalism, it's not a bug in our system. It's a feature of our system. Explain.
That's right. It is central to how the Constitution was laid out by James Madison, which is, I'm going to disperse power so widely that if you want to make any progress in this country, you're going to have to find alliances. You're going to have to move together and find somebody else who supports you, even though they're from a different part of the country. And so Madison takes power and spreads it across three branches of government: executive, judicial, legislative. Then in the legislative branch has two houses rather than the previous system, the Articles of Confederation, which just had a Congress. And then you have dispersal between the states and the federal system. So American power is just all over the place. And you kind of saw that with Trump. Trump talked a lot, but not much happened in the government. In fact, I think kind of the Trump era was like we went back to the Articles of Confederation. We had a bunch of governors trying to do things, and we had a central government that seemed frozen and powerless.
So let's talk about the book more generally. It's fascinating to have you on now because you, in fact, started this journey of yours 4 years ago, the day after the election of Donald Trump in 2016. And decided to go back to the beginning and to figure out what this country was about. And to do that, you studied what our founders studied, but you also examined the differences between their own education and how it shaped the leaders they became as they were framing our Constitution and our country. Talk about that.
Well, that's right. On that morning after the 2016 presidential election, I went downstairs to my library and said, what happened? How can I think about this? So I went and took Aristotle's Politics off the shelf. Let's begin with the fundamentals. What does Aristotle say? And that led me eventually to reading what the founders read, which is very different from how we think of Greece and Rome. They had a different Greece and Rome. Greece was somewhere off in the background. They didn't really care about Greece, with a couple of exceptions. They were very focused on Roman history. For example, they thought the leading playwright of the ancient world was Terence. Terence was a Roman comic playwright nobody reads today. So they had a different world they looked to. And out of this, when they looked and said, how do you design a republic? There weren't a lot of examples. And so they looked back especially to ancient Greece and ancient Rome and said, where did they go wrong? For example, one of the conclusions of historians about the ancient world was republics don't last long. So one of the questions they had going into the Constitution with Madison especially was, how do you make a republic last? How does it sustain itself? And I think if they came back today, they would be pleasantly surprised that the machine they designed in the 18th century is still here more than 250 years later, still working, partly because they designed it to be changed, to be fixed, to be amended. And they've had a lot of amendments. The educations of these guys were so different, though. George Washington is essentially an uneducated man, to the shock of the sort of voluble people around him, like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Washington is very conscious of this, of his lack of education. But the interesting thing is, I think he becomes a real good critical thinker because of it. He knows he's not well educated. He knows he's not a good writer. So he finds this kid, Alexander Hamilton, who's a great writer, and gets him to do a lot of the writing for him during the war. Jefferson is a very different guy, kind of the outlier, more a Greek than a Roman, more into Epicurean thinking about happiness than stoical thinking like Washington. Adams is this almost a Woody Allen-like figure, wearing his heart on his sleeve. But I think Adams also has been a bit hyped in recent years. He was a disaster as a president. His most significant act as president was putting 25 journalists who were critical of him simply in jail. He just put them in jail for being critical of him. He thought that was tantamount to treason. You shouldn't criticize the president. And finally, there's James Madison, who I grew so fond of as I wrote this book. Madison is small. He has some form of epilepsy, we think. He does not have a good speaking voice, yet he has enormous influence over how the country is built. And I think plays an important role, not just with the Constitution, which he kind of proposes, let's have a new fundamental law of the land. He goes to the meeting with all these Greek and Roman references. He spent 4 years studying how do we design a republic. And then he helps invent the politics of the country in the 1790s, when Adams is kind of basically freaking out as president, saying nobody should criticize me. That's illegal. Madison's actually saying, no, let's have politics. Let's have party politics. Let's have factions that compete with each other, because that way power is so dispersed that people will have to come together and make deals with each other, and that's a good thing.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.